All right, so you know how everyone's talking about the potential of AI. But how do we actually prove AI is making a difference in a large organization? We're going to get into all of that today. You see all these articles, but then you start to think, show me the money. Where's the proof? So get ready, because we're going to dive deep into this Cognition.Info report called Making AI Impact Visible to give you the knowledge to spot real measurable results from AI and cut through all the hype.
You're absolutely right. That's a challenge that a lot of companies face. There's this kind of like a disconnect between all this excitement around AI and actually like being able to demonstrate its value, in concrete terms. The report calls this the visibility problem. And it really does have serious consequences.
Okay, so let's break down this visibility problem. What happens if companies can't measure what AI is doing for them, practically speaking? What does that mean for you?
Well, imagine this. You've got your AI team, they're hitting every technical milestone, they're building some incredible tools, but then budget talks come around. And you're left like struggling to to tie your work to, actual profit or loss prevention. That lack of evidence can cause some serious issues. Budgets get slashed, projects stall, and your top talent might even walk out the door feeling like their contributions are not valued.
It's like you're celebrating a victory that no one really understands. I bet that lack of clarity makes leadership skeptical, viewing AI as a gamble instead of the strategic investment it should be.
Precisely. And this report really digs into why this measurement crisis happens. One trap that companies fall into is they hyper-focus on technical metrics, like how accurate an algorithm is. But those impressive numbers don't always translate into, real-world business outcomes.
I've seen that. You have a team that's ecstatic about reaching some technical goal, but no one can connect it to increased sales or happier customers.
Exactly. And it even gets more complicated because of something called the attribution challenge. In a company with so many moving parts, how do you really pinpoint what's due to AI versus other factors that are influencing the business? It's like trying to figure out which spice in a complex dish is actually responsible for the flavor.
So it's not as simple as saying, we used AI and profits went up.
Right. And then there's the time lag effect to consider. Some AI benefits, they actually take a while to appear, but reporting cycles often demand immediate results. That mismatch makes it seem like AI isn't delivering even if it's setting the stage for huge success in the future.
So we've got this measurement crisis, but I'm guessing this report doesn't just point out the problems, does it? It gives us a framework to actually solve this.
It does, absolutely. And the foundation is understanding that AI impact, it's not just one-dimensional. They break it down into 3 areas: business impact, technical performance, and organizational enablement. Think of it like you're judging a new restaurant. The food needs to be good. That's like your technical performance. The atmosphere should be inviting. That's your organizational enablement. And ultimately, the business needs to make money. That's the business impact. You can't just focus on one.
That's a great analogy. It really highlights how these different dimensions all work together. But how do we actually measure this? How do we measure this in the real world? And that's where the AI value measurement matrix comes in, right?
It's a fantastic tool because it helps you tailor your metrics to the specific AI application that you're using. So instead of this kind of one-size-fits-all approach, you can actually get much more targeted insights.
So if I'm using an AI chatbot for customer service, this matrix would tell me to look beyond just how quickly the bot solves problems, and instead measure things like how much effort did the bot save the customer, or even did the interaction actually strengthen their relationship with the company? Because a chatbot that's technically proficient but leaves people frustrated is ultimately a failure.
Exactly. And this report doesn't stop there. It provides a model to help organizations gauge where they are on their AI measurement journey. It's called the AI Measurement Maturity Model, and it actually outlines 4 stages.
Okay, I love a good maturity model. This helps us see where we stand and what to do next. So walk us through those 4 stages.
So it starts with ad hoc measurement, which is kind of all over the place. Things are measured inconsistently. And then you progress to standardized, where you've got consistent metrics and reporting. Imagine learning to play a musical instrument. At first, you're just making noise. That's the ad hoc. But then you learn some basic techniques. That's standardized.
So like going from banging on the keys to playing scales.
Exactly. Then you've got integrated measurement, where you're doing real-time monitoring and using predictive analytics. This is where you can start to improvise and jam with the data that you have.
And then the ultimate goal, that strategic stage, is where you're composing your own music, right? You're using measurement to actually guide your AI strategy and outperform the competition.
Exactly. It's a journey. And most companies are not starting at that strategic level. The key is to honestly assess where you are and use this report as guidance to level up.
So let's say you're ready to build your AI measurement strategy. Where do you begin? What are some key takeaways from the report to keep in mind?
Well, the report really emphasizes choosing the right metrics because not all metrics are created equal. They actually lay out some criteria for evaluating potential metrics. So you want to ask yourself, is this metric really tied to my strategic goals? It's easy to get caught up in measuring things that are easy to track, but if they're not connected to the big picture, they're not going to be helpful.
It's all about focusing on what matters. And the report also highlights the importance of reliability, right? You don't want to base decisions on data that's flawed or inconsistent. It'd be like building a house on a shaky foundation.
Exactly. And here's the million-dollar question. Can you actually isolate the impact of AI? Can you prove that it's AI making the difference and not all those other factors we were talking about?
That's so important. We can't just assume AI is the hero of the story. Now, I know this report goes into some very sophisticated methods for dealing with this attribution challenge, which I'm excited to get into later. But first, I think we need to talk about communication. So you've measured the impact. How do you actually get people to care?
You're right. Measuring is just half the battle, right? You have to then be able to tell the story in a way that actually resonates with your audience.
And I'm guessing that a spreadsheet full of numbers isn't going to cut it. We need something much more compelling than that.
Absolutely. And that's where we'll pick up in the next part of this deep dive. So stay tuned.
Okay, so we've got all the groundwork laid for how to measure this AI impact. Now let's talk about how to share those insights effectively. Because a spreadsheet full of numbers is not going to get anyone excited, right? We got to make this information resonate.
Absolutely. Yeah, you need to turn the data into a story.
Yeah.
Make it a compelling narrative.
Yeah.
And that starts by recognizing that different stakeholders care about different things. What really clicks with the CEO might not be what interests, your average tech team member.
It's like speaking different languages within the same company. How does the report suggest that we tailor that communication?
Well, it actually breaks it down really well. They talk about, executive leadership, business unit leaders, you've got your technical teams, and even the end users of the AI tools.
So if I'm talking to an executive, I'd focus on the big picture, right? Like how AI is affecting the bottom line. Are we getting an edge over our competitors? Because that's what really keeps them up at night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they want that clear connection between the money they're putting into AI and the company's goals. Now, if you're talking to a business unit leader, you might shift gears and focus on how AI is improving their team's efficiency, maybe even freeing up their time so they can focus on more strategic work.
And for the tech team, I'd imagine they want all the nitty-gritty details. How is the model performing? How are we doing compared to industry benchmarks?
Right. They need that to, constantly iterate and improve. And what's interesting is this report even talks about how to communicate AI impact to the end users. People actually using these AI tools day in and day out.
Because if they don't understand the benefits, then, adoption is going to suffer, right? They need to see how AI is making their lives easier, not harder.
Yeah, you got it. The report suggests focusing on things like usability improvements, highlighting how AI can simplify tasks, maybe reduce their workload, or even, give them superpowers that they didn't have before. It's all about showing them that AI is not some, abstract technology. It's a tool that can directly improve their experience.
Okay, so we've talked about tailoring the message, but what about the delivery? Are there any tactics that this report recommends to make the communication more impactful?
Yeah, for sure. So the report really emphasizes the power of using visuals and storytelling. Like using those before and after comparisons to really demonstrate AI's impact in a way that people can immediately grasp.
Sometimes a simple chart is all you need to tell a much better story than a long presentation.
Exactly. And then there's the art of storytelling. They suggest using case studies, weaving those numbers into narratives that bring the data to life.
Actually, this report has some great case studies, like the one from that financial services company. They showed with hard numbers that their AI-powered fraud detection system saved them something like $32 million. Can you imagine going into the CEO's office and showing them that kind of concrete impact?
Oh, yeah. That's definitely a story that gets attention. And it's not just about showcasing wins. It's also about using data to identify areas for improvement. This report really promotes the idea of building a culture of continuous learning around AI measurement.
So it's not just a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process of analyzing the data, learning from it, and then adapting your approach to get better over time.
Exactly. Yeah, they recommend actually like having these regular review sessions where teams come together, they can dig into the data and they can brainstorm ways to optimize their AI initiatives. It's all about that feedback loop.
And it's not just about the specific projects you're working on, right? The insights you get from measuring AI can actually inform your whole AI strategy moving forward. It's about getting smarter with how you use this technology across the entire organization.
Yeah, that's a great point. This report emphasizes, capturing those aha moments,
Yeah.
like documenting the lessons learned along the way so that collective knowledge becomes a real asset for the organization.
Okay, so we've got the framework, we've tailored our message, we're using visuals and storytelling. Now, let's look at some real-world companies that are actually doing this well. The report has a bunch of really good case studies that I'm really excited to dig into.
Let's do it. They have some amazing stories that really illustrate the power of this whole measuring AI impact thing. Why don't we start with that manufacturing one? They talk about this, global industrial manufacturer that was using AI for predictive maintenance.
That's a perfect example of where the time lag effect can really come into play. The full benefits of that predictive maintenance might not be obvious right away. You have to think long term.
Yeah, exactly. So initially, they were just tracking technical metrics, like how accurate their predictions were. But then they realized, we need to broaden our perspective here to really understand the value that we're creating.
So what did they do? How did they measure the impact of their maintenance system in a more holistic way?
They actually developed something called a downtime impact model.
Yeah.
It was designed to actually quantify, the financial hit they were taking from equipment failures. So by comparing their AI-driven approach to their, old school maintenance methods, they were able to show like a 42% reduction in unplanned downtime.
Wow, that's a huge result. And I'm guessing that they were able to put a dollar amount on that reduction.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
That 42% reduction turned into $28 million saved every single year. That's the kind of number that really speaks to executives.
No kidding. Did they find any other benefits once they started measuring more strategically?
Oh, yeah, totally. They actually saw an 18% drop in their overall maintenance costs because, they could optimize the timing of their interventions. And here's a really big one. They found that the AI was actually helping them extend the lifespan of their equipment, which led to $64 million in avoided capital expenditures.
Okay, that's next level.
Yeah.
And it all came from having a solid measurement strategy in place.
It really shows that, measuring AI impact isn't just about checking boxes or justifying your existence. It's about uncovering all this hidden value and making smarter decisions across the board.
Speaking of uncovering hidden value, I know the report also has that case study from healthcare, which I'm really interested in. That one focused on using AI for clinical decision support, right?
Yeah. So this healthcare provider network was using AI to help their clinicians make, better decisions about patient care, which, as you can imagine, has huge implications for patient outcomes and, healthcare costs.
Absolutely. But how do you actually measure something as complex as, clinical decision support? It's not as straightforward as counting widgets on a factory line.
Yeah, they took a multi-pronged approach. They created this value framework that linked clinical decisions to both patient outcomes and financial results. And then they did a randomized rollout so they could actually compare, the AI-supported decisions to the traditional decision-making processes.
Like a controlled experiment to isolate the impact of the AI. That's really smart. What were some of the big findings from that case study?
Well, they saw a big reduction in treatment variability, which is a huge win in healthcare. It means that they were able to kind of standardize care and reduce, unnecessary variations in treatment plans.
Which not only, improves the quality of care, but also helps keep costs down over time.
Yeah, exactly. And they actually documented a 15% improvement in those targeted patient outcomes that they could directly attribute to the AI support. That's a powerful result,
Oh, yeah.
Showing that AI is making a real difference in people's lives.
That's incredible. And I bet they saw a positive impact on the financial side as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They were able to show a $38 million annual cost reduction thanks to that improved care efficiency and reduction in complications. I don't know about you, but I find these case studies really inspiring. They really showcase the power of measuring AI impact in a way that's both meaningful and actually drives real results. But I think it's important to remember that, this journey, it's not always smooth sailing. The report doesn't sugarcoat the challenges that come up along the way.
You're right. Measuring AI impact in the real world can get messy. So let's take a look at some of those challenges and explore how the report, helps us navigate them. Knowing what to expect can help us avoid some common pitfalls.
Totally. And I think a good place to start is that issue of data silos. It's something that most large organizations deal with. You've got all this valuable data, but it's stuck in different departments. They can't talk to each other.
Ugh, the dreaded data silos. They're like walls that prevent us from seeing the whole picture. How do we break those down so we can get that holistic view of AI's impact?
The report offers a few practical solutions, starting with the idea of a data lake. It's basically like one central repository where you could bring all that data together. And they also talk about using APIs, to allow seamless data sharing between different systems.
Okay, so those are great technical solutions, but I'm imagining there are cultural and organizational hurdles to overcome as well, right? It's not just about the tech, it's about getting people on board.
Absolutely, yeah. Data governance is a big one. You need clear rules and processes around who can access what data and how it can be used responsibly.
Because data privacy and security are so important. And beyond those technical aspects, there's that human element, fostering a culture of collaboration and data sharing across the organization.
And that's where, leadership really needs to step up and set the tone. Creating incentives for teams to actually work together and share data openly. It's all about building trust and breaking down those silos of knowledge.
So we talked about data silos and, proving that it's AI that's really making a difference. But are there any other hurdles that companies run into when they're trying to measure AI's impact? This report seems to really lay out the nitty-gritty, doesn't it?
It does. And I think that's what makes it so useful. Another challenge that they point out is this problem of metrics not being aligned, across different stakeholders. We talk about tailoring communication to different audiences, but sometimes you have these groups with their favorite metrics that don't always fit into the bigger picture.
I can definitely see how that would create some tension. Like the sales team is super focused on those lead generation numbers, but then the product team is all about user engagement. So how do you bring those different priorities together?
That's where those metric workshops that the report talks about could be super helpful. The idea is to bring all the stakeholders to the table early on and really work out a shared set of metrics that everyone can get behind.
It's like having everyone on the same page before the game even starts. Everyone agrees on what winning looks like and how we're going to keep score.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it prevents those silos from forming in the first place.
Yeah.
And that leads to, better communication and a much more unified strategy.
So we've talked about data silos, proving that AI is responsible for the results and making sure everyone is using the same metrics. But what about just the sheer amount of data? Doesn't all this measuring create a lot of extra work?
Yeah, you've hit on another big issue that the report covers, and it's measurement overhead. If you're not careful, tracking all these metrics can basically become a job in itself, and that takes up time and resources that could be used for other things.
It's like that saying, what gets measured gets managed. But if you're measuring every little thing, you might end up spending more time on measuring than actually doing the work. So how do we find that balance?
The report gives us some really good advice here. First, they talk about automation. Wherever you can, try to automate the data collection and reporting process so you're not stuck doing everything manually.
Makes sense. Let the computers do the work whenever possible. Any other tips for keeping the measurement process streamlined?
Yeah, the report really stresses focusing on the important stuff. Prioritize the metrics that actually matter for making decisions and don't get lost in all those data points. Be strategic with your measurement.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We talked about how companies struggle to show the impact of AI, the different ways to measure that impact, the importance of communicating it effectively, and even some real-world examples. But maybe more importantly, we looked at how to overcome the challenges that organizations face when they're trying to measure AI's impact.
And what's really exciting is that this isn't just a bunch of theory. It's actually a set of very practical steps that any organization can take to start seeing results.
Exactly. You don't need to be some kind of data science guru to start making AI's impact more visible. This report gives you the tools and frameworks you need to start asking the right questions and build a measurement strategy that actually works for your organization. So if you're working with AI, in any capacity, whether you're leading a team, building the tech, or just curious about its impact, I really encourage you to think about what we've talked about today.
Yeah, think about one small thing that you can do this week, just to make AI's impact more tangible, something you can measure within your team. Maybe it's starting a conversation, suggesting a metric workshop, or even playing around with a new visualization tool. Anything every little bit helps.
We spent a lot of time talking about metrics and, measurement, but at the end of the day, it's all about showing the real value that AI is creating. The organizations that really thrive in this world, powered by AI, it won't necessarily be the ones with the most complicated algorithms. It'll be the ones who can clearly show how those algorithms are solving problems, improving people's lives, and making the future better.
So go out there and make AI's impact visible. Let's show the world what AI can really do when we can actually measure it and communicate its true potential.
I love that. That's a great way to wrap things up. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another exciting exploration of the ideas and innovations shaping the world around us.